connected with his community. He helped to build, consolidate, and strengthen and expand the influence of the People's Progressive Party in this village and in the entire West Bank and West Coast. At the political level and parliamentary level, there was not, or I would say there was hardly, a national policy issue which Komal Chan did not help to formulate or speak about in the National Assembly as a member of Parliament. He distinguished himself on his return from studies in the USSR when he was assigned responsibilities at Gao in the early 1970s. Together with such stalwarts as Ram Karan, Maki Hamid, Philomena Sahay, also known as the Fireball, Albert Boudou, Sri Chan, Harilal, Komal Chan played an exemplary role as a young, vibrant trade unionist. As a trade union cadre, Komal was involved in Gao's struggle for recognition as a bargaining agent for sugar workers in the field. He was in the thick of things during a 5-week strike by bauxite workers in July-August of 1979. Ever since those days, and with the passing of many of his colleagues, Komal mastered the art of successful negotiations with Gaisuko to wrest from the corporation greater benefits for sugar workers. We call him the Kissinger of Gaisuko negotiations. Komal learned a lot from veteran trade unionists like Chedi Jagan, Boise Ramkaran, Harilal, and Maki Hamid. Throughout his association with the sugar industry, Komal never abandoned the sugar workers for opportunistic reasons nor material benefits. Allegations of corruption were never leveled against him. During the PPP's tenure in office, Komal was confronted with many difficult tasks. The task of balancing industrial relations with the political, which he became very adept at doing. Sometimes those interests appeared to clash, but in the process of consultation and cooperation, those issues were amicably resolved. Komal Chan lived to see how the APNU AFC reckless, insensitive, and destructive approach to the sugar industry left thousands of sugar workers jobless and without bread on their tables. He fought this short-sighted policy to the end, yet he remained optimistic about the confidence of the sugar workers in their union. And so was Komal, the fighter and believer. He has left a lasting legacy to the union he once led and the trade union movement in this country as a whole. Rest in peace, Comrade Komal. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Roy. I also want to acknowledge in our midst Comrade Irfan Ali, the President-elect of Guyana, and we'll have him say something, but after Comrade Donald Ramatar. Comrade Ramatar has also been a long-standing friend of Comrade Komal Chan, and I want to quickly share a story with you about Comrade Komal's statement and love for Comrade Ramatar. When Chedi died, and Comrade Ramatar became the General Secretary, he was very happy. And he said, you know, Gopes, I really, really love Comrade Donald. We worked together in Gao. And if there was one day we end up in a creek and 4 of us are there, and Comrade Ramatar going down, and I got to save one person, it will be Comrade Donald. So much he loved him. And that love and affection remained to his last day. When he was leaving the morning to Cuba, he called me and he said he was going. Tell Comrade Donald he didn't get to talk to him today, but he's going to see us back. When word got around of his passing, Comrade Donald called and we started to work together to see how fast we could get the body back, and he played an integral role. Komal would have been happy of his involvement from then to now. And so, Comrade Ramatar, we want to thank you and call you to the microphone.
Thank you, Masters of Ceremonies. Allow me, first of all, to extend deepest sympathy to Rosalind, to the children, grandchildren, the brothers and sisters, to the leadership and membership of the GAU, to Comrade Komal, friends in the PPP. Allow me also to extend, as Comrade Gopal mentioned just now, we work very closely with the Cuban ambassador, and he's here with us today, and I'm happy he's here so that we can extend our thanks to him for the efforts that he made to help Comrade Komal to try to get back his health. The last time I spoke or had contact with Komal Chan was on the 18th of February. He sent a text to me to say that he had an offer from the Cuban comrades to go to Cuba to try to regain his health. And he would be away for 3 weeks. I think he was asking me about it because it meant that he would have been away during elections time. And I told him, Comrade, you have to go. Because for more than a year, I was concerned about his health. I know he spent some time in Florida trying to get better. And I was shocked when I came here on New Year's Day, the beginning of this year, to spend some time with him, me and a few other comrades, to see how much weight he had lost and how thin he had become. So I was concerned about him, and I told him, you have to go. And then he went, and the rest of it is history. And that was the last contact I had from more than 50 years of conversation and relations with Comrade Komal Chan. I don't remember exactly when we first met. It was in the mid-60s, and I used to see him at Freedom House, and we see him at PPP activities. But the first time when I began to get close to him was when, probably in 1967, I came here to this house in the company of Comrade Narbada Prasad, Feroz Mohammed, and another stalwart who was with us, Comrade Hari Narayan Naubat, known as Rani. And that is when we started to get close. Komal was already then a stalwart of the party. He worked together with his brother Dal Chan in the 1961 elections with Fenton Ramsahoy. He had very close relationship with E.M.G. Wilson, and he actually told me that he learned a lot of organizational skills from Comrade Wilson, who he regarded as one of the best organizers that he had worked with. He had good relationship with, and a lot of jokes too, with Comrade Pariak Sukai. Once he told me that we went to a house doing party work, a lady's house. She was living alone. And then when she saw the lady had a little pussycat, and jumping on Pariag lap. So that shows you the kind of relations that Pariag, the extracurricular activities that Pariag had. But those are some of the things, and then we became closer and closer. We got extremely close when we went to Moscow together in 1972. He was there from 71, I went there from 1972. And we became very close friends. And we had some adventures together, some of which he never stopped reminding me of. I got in trouble with some students from the Arab world, and we had a little bit of problems, and some negotiation had to take place. And we wanted it to take place without the glare of the authority of the school or without the rest of our group knowing about what happened. And who I took with me to represent me, Komal Chan. And he never allowed me to forget that. He always says to me that he was my distinguished counsel. So I always remember those days, and we always had a lot. As the comrade said, he was a very disciplined man. When I knew him, hardly anything was out of place. The two of us were kind of opposites in that regard. Hardly anything was out of place with Komal. He was always neatly dressed, short in his pants, tidy, not a hair out of place. And I always, I didn't pay much attention to some of those things. And then the comrade said he was a man of looking at good details on these matters. But we got very close friends then, and when we came back to Guyana, it was just on the eve of the 1973 elections, and we even worked even closer with each other. As I said at the beginning, he had already accumulated a lot of experience. He was in the steering committee to reform the PYO in the 1960s, after it had been defunct with Moses Bagwan after the 1964 elections. And he was there together with Comrade Naubat and very few other comrades around at that time. So he already had a strong reputation as a strong party man and a man to get in touch with on the West Bank whenever you're coming in this direction. The comrades mentioned all the people that he worked very closely with. And then when he came back, he had other positions too. His internationalism, his strong, deep Marxist conviction, his fundamental socialism, and he wanted to spread that as much as possible. And it was only natural that he became the head of the Guyana Soviet Friendship Society, an organization that he led for many, many years. And I had the opportunity of working with him in that organization as well. And as he always, his activities always came off with a bang. And then, after the 1973 elections, in the next year, Komal was, even before the GAU was recognized, he was involved deeply in the strike for recognition, the 1975 strike, the only strike in the world that I ever heard. Chen Jagan adjourned the strike to come back the next year with another big strike that eventually led to recognition, that eventually led to the government giving the pole. On that day, I never forgot, it was Old Year's Day in 1975, and I spent the whole day on this West Bank in the company of Comrade Komal Chan as we campaigned in Wales for the GAU. And after that, after recognition, his name is signed on the recognition agreement in February of 1976, And then he moved shortly thereafter to the 1977 major strike, 135-day strike, which was a strike to try to defend not only industrial democracy, but to defend agreements. The GAU had an agreement with Gaisuku to pay increase in wages when the government decided that they will reverse that decision. And that forced the union into a strike that lasted for 135 days. And it was a very difficult one because you had to feed workers and keep them going for that length of time. But that is another area that we work closely together with. I work closely together with him. When I came back from my stint in Europe in the 1980s, I began working at the GAU, and by then he was already the leader and the head of the union. And I worked there together with him and Comrade Narain and other comrades, Ulrich Ramana, Mitulal Mangal, and other comrades. We worked there together for 5 years before I left and went back to the party's office. And Rohi and I always, whenever we refer to Komal activities, we always talk about Henry. Always call him Henry, because we had nicknamed him Kissinger because of his love for international affairs and his negotiating skills. And I saw some of his negotiation skills close up. Having been with many GAU delegations in the 5 years that I was in the union, to him it was a joy, or I don't know if it's a real, looking back now, it was nice and a good experience. But then sometimes it could have been torture to hear Komal Chan and DP Sankar negotiating. DP Sankar, every word DP Sankar talked, he paused for 5 minutes before he mentioned the other word. And Komal matched him toe to toe. So sometimes he had agony to listen to some of those negotiations, those tough negotiations that went on at the Gaisuku area. But those were 5 years, and after I went to the party's office, we still continued our contact and our regular contact. Comrade Komal was instrumental too. Another strike that I want to recall, that I remember very clearly, was the 1989 strike. And I remember the day that he arrived at the office. When he came over from here, he went to the office to work. And immediately he told us, as he came there, that he saw workers from the bridge walking off the job. And then I knew immediately that this is going to be a big strike. And that 1989 strike was a tough one, a difficult one. But Komal not only led the sugar workers and kept them going, but he was also instrumental in going to Linden to save some of the bauxite trade unionists from getting beat up when the strike was about to be called off. But because of his stature and the integrity that he had, and the trust that he built, people trusted him and went along with what he said. Apart from the fact of this trade union and political activity, he was very multi-talented. I said that when I knew him first, he was a mechanic. And he was not just an ordinary mechanic. He studied it, he did a course, he bought books, and he studied the theory and practice of mechanical engineering. And I believe that if he wasn't, like many of us, trapped into the political arena, he would have had a thriving mechanical workshop here and keep it going. He was very industrious. You never came here and Komal was doing nothing. The only time I came here and saw Komal in the house was old New Year's Day of this year. Otherwise, he had some cows. He used the cows and he had his own biogas. And he was always engaged in some type of activity. He and I also traveled together with Komal Janet Jagan in 1996 when we went to China to see the miracle that is the People's Republic of China, the tremendous development that has been and is taking place in that country. And I think both of us were thrilled to see how a socialist country was developing and has now come to be the number 2 economic power in the world. And everyone agrees that very soon it is going to be the number 1 country in the world. And that is practically part of the reason that you have so much of tension now with the West and China, because there is a great attempt to retard the growth of the People's Republic of China. Comrades, I have had many friends in my lifetime. Some have proven not to be so great friends, but many have been proven to be wonderful people. And among those genuine comrades and friends that I will always hold closest to my heart is Comrade Komal Chan. Not that we didn't have disagreements. We had a lot of disagreements, particularly when I was president and he was calling strikes. And I was telling him sometimes that you have to realize that the interest of the working class is not only calling strikes for more money, but there were more important things sometimes that the workers will need. But despite whatever differences we had at that level, it never ever affected our personal relationship. I felt that he was one of the most reliable persons. He was one of the most confidential people. In fact, he was so confidential to a fault. He was so private. Sometimes you didn't know where the shoes was pinching his foot, because there are many things he never talked about in his lifetime. I believe that all of us who knew him, who worked with him, who loved him, who supported him, can be consoled by the fact that he lived a life of service, that he gave whatever faults he would have, and he's not without faults. He's a very difficult man sometimes when you're at the meetings to deal with him. As Narayan said, sometimes he could be even very harsh at meetings. He was a human being. But he was a man that gave his whole life. He didn't come exactly from the working class. Komal might have been far better off financially if he didn't go into the union. But he chose to go in that direction and to make a contribution. He had friends from all walks of life. He recruited. He had a very good friend. He has a very good friend that is here today, Comrade Puran, who is his close associate. But how did he know Puran? He recruited Fazal Ali into the party and into the PPP. Fazal was another stalwart of the party, and Fazal, he got to know Puran via Fazal, and after Fazal passed, Puran was adopted in Fazal's place. So he was a wonderful comrade, a man that gave his all, a man that gave tremendous service to the people of this country. I feel very fortunate today that I have had the opportunity to work so closely with him, to share not only the work and the problems, but also to share some joy, some fun, some drinks together, and some talking that we had. That relationship will live with me forever. And for me, and I know for many, the memories we have of Komal Chan will never die. Thank you very much for your attention. Just before I leave, I want to express two thanks to another gentleman who did a lot, who I was in contact with a lot in the period of time that Komal was in Cuba. And that is Guyana's ambassador to Cuba, Halim Majid. He did try his best. When I know that Halim was not getting through very much with what we wanted him to do, was when he's not picking up his phone. But otherwise, Halim did, I think, his best to make it comfortable for Mrs. Chan and to try to help us, all of us. And he was an early associate of Komal as part of the resuscitation of the PYO. And when Komal's body was about to leave Cuba, he called me. And even though now they're on different political sides, Halim burst into tears. And he told me it was a little too much for him to take. Ladies and gentlemen, we're saying farewell to a true Guyanese hero, a man who never sought to be in the limelight, but whose contribution can never be forgotten or can never be put down. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Immediately after the death of our comrade, President-elect His Excellency Irfan Ali issued a moving tribute which was all over the papers and in the news. And we want to thank him for that early tribute, and we want to thank him for being here with us today, despite the difficulties which the party and with what is taking place today in our land. Comrade Komal Chan would have indeed been happy to see the reins of power changing and handed over to a young and vibrant Comrade Irfan Ali, but that was not to be. We are waiting in anguish since May 2nd for the change and for the truly elected person to take the reins of power. Comrade Ramutar end fittingly that we pay tribute to this great son. We also want to thank Comrade Oja Maharaj from Trinidad, who has also been in contact with us constantly as we work with Caribbean Airlines. And my son, Dr. Ghansham Singh, who is having duties at the hospital, has asked me to convey his family's sympathy to the family and friends of Comrade Komal Chan. You always call him Uncle Komal. And I'm happy that he was one of the physicians looking at Comrade Komal when he fell ill. So my family also extend that sympathy. We bring the court into a close for the final rites. Thank all of you for coming, and we proceed to Kashi Dan. Manaji, anything else? So we proceed. Oh, sorry. I now call on the son, a champion. Okay. All right. We have an amendment to the program. How can I forget Lavendra? I would also, he said I recognize the ambassador of Cuba, His Excellency. I will call on him to say a few words. Excellency.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to express a few words on behalf of the government and the people of Cuba. Death is not true when the work of life has been well done. I wish to thank the family of Komal and his comrades for the opportunity to participate in this ceremony celebrating the life of our dear friend. Komal was a lawyer and a genuine friend of the people of Cuba and the Cuban Revolution. He was a humble and good man, a tireless fighter, a revolutionary, a true Guyanese patriot. On behalf of the Cuban government, especially the Guyanese and Cuban officials and the workers of the Cuban embassy, my wife and myself, I wish to express our most sincere condolences to his family, comrades, and friends. Komal dedicated his entire life to defending just causes, not only of the Guyanese workers, but also of other in need around the world. He was a man consistent with the principle that all injustice, wherever occurs, should be condemned. During his life, as a revolutionary, he assumed important responsibility as a trade union leader, as a deputy, always to the service of the most modest people, and in particular, the agricultural and sugar workers. Wherever he went, Komal left a trace of good deeds and will always be remembered and admired as an example of life dedicated to the struggle for social justice. I personally witnessed Komal's simplicity and kindness, and above all, his revolutionary determination, his passion in defending fair causes. I remember with pleasure and gratitude my many conversations with Komal. He was an enlightened and intelligent man with a deep knowledge of Guyana and the world. I learned a lot from Komal. At Komal's home, I was received with respect and love, as was my wife, my colleagues at the embassy, for which I want to express my gratitude especially to his wife and son. The example of Komal will always be with us. Rest in peace, dear comrade. You will always live in our greatest heart. As the Cuban national hero Jose Marti said, death is not true when the work of life has been well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, and we come to the final speech for this activity. Movendra Chan, son of Comrade Komal Chan, one who has withstood very many difficulties throughout this period, will now bring the eulogy. I'm sure Komal will be proud of the mature way in which he dealt with the passing of his father. Welcome, son.
Good morning, everyone. Before I start, I just want to say we have copies of the combat outside. As you know, the combat is Gao's paper. The combat has a tribute by Gao to Daddy, so feel free. The copies are somewhere by the gate area. Feel free to pick up a copy. My father, Komal Chan, was born on October 9th, 1944. It was a Monday, on this very land. He was the 8th child of Dwarkanath, more commonly known as Lachman, and Sukya Harangi, who we used to call Ma. He is survived by his siblings, Sonny Dalchan, Chia, Pat, Chan, Girja, Parbu, Bisun, and Shorli. His deceased siblings are Lekrani, Sita, Moses, Baba, and Love. He attended the St. Thomas Anglican Primary School at Baggotsville with his siblings. As a child, he really enjoyed school and was very studious, choosing to read instead of going out to play. Although he loved to play bat and ball with his brothers and neighbors, he was brilliant in school and very much inspired by the success of his elder brother. With this in mind, his father decided to fully support his attendance of high school. He then went on to attend the Muslim Educational Trust College in Georgetown, where he demonstrated discipline in his studies and he was successful. His friends in the village knew that once they saw the light on late in the night, that it was Komal studying, reading. That was a usual sight. My father was introduced in politics in the 1960s after assisting his elder brother Dalchan in the 1961 and 1964 elections and reading his literature on the work of Karl Marx and Lenin. Uncle Dalchan was a member of the executive committee of the PPP and a member of the PPP for many years. At my father's young age, and with the counsel of Uncle Dalchan, he joined the youth arm of the PPP, the Progressive Youth Organization. He was well liked and matured to a young adult in the PYO. In 1965, my father became a member of the steering committee to rejuvenate the PYO. He excelled in this position, and his interest and fascination with politics grew as he saw the value for policy making and how policies impacted the livelihood of people. He admired Dr. Chedi Jagan, the leader of the PPP, and how Dr. Jagan related to and spoke to all people. He also believed in the principles that Dr. Jagan stood for. He believed in the value of every human life and in empowering people so that they can improve the quality of their lives. In 1971, September, he went to Russia to study political science at the People's Friendship University in Moscow, Russia. According to his friends, he was a very disciplined, calm, studious, and great company. He returned to Ghana in 1973 and went to Freedom House to release Comrade Rohi to serve as a personal assistant to Dr. Jagan. When Comrade Rohi returned in 1975, Daddy joined the Guyana Agricultural General Workers Union as the union's organizing secretary. In late 1975, my grandfather, Nan Prasad, a Gao advocate and staunch PPP supporter, took his two elder daughters, my mother and aunt, to volunteer at Gao to prepare the membership register for the recognition poll in the sugar industry. Gao had struggled for many years for the recognition on behalf of field and factory workers in the sugar industry. And on Old Year's Day in 1975, a poll was held. At this poll, the Gao won more than 90% of the votes and defeated the incumbent Manpower Citizens Association to become the bargaining agent for thousands of field and factory workers in the sugar belt. My father dedicated himself to the working people of this country. He was among those who, on February 26, 1976, appended the recognition and avoidance and settlements of dispute agreement with the then Sugar Producers Association, which later became Gaisuku. In April 1976, my mother, Rukmin, more commonly known as Rosalind, gained employment at GAU. In 1980, after a brief romance, my parents got married and later produced 3 children. My 2 sisters, Navi and Nadi, who sadly cannot be here, and myself. During these years, my father's working class convictions strengthened, and he rose to become the General Secretary, then President of the Union. In recognition for his role as a foremost labor leader, he was a recipient of the third highest national award, the Cassie Crown of Honor. While pursuing his union work, he also served as a long-standing leader of the People's Progressive Party, both Central Committee member and executive member for several decades. He served as a member of the Guyana Parliament for the PPP from 1992, December 17th, uninterruptedly until the Parliament was last dissolved in December 2019. He was the party's representative for Essequibo Islands West Damara Region 3. His public life was well publicized, and even though he was accomplished in his career and world travels, he was still the same with any and everyone, humble, simple, quiet, and lighting up a conversation with his warm smile. He is a role model in our family among his siblings and their children, and is well loved and respected. Growing up, I can remember my father being very busy at work. On weekends, when he was not at meetings or discussions with villagers and party comrades, he was working from home. My older sister's Nadi's love for reading was nurtured by seeing him at his desk, working on his piles of paperwork or reading books, newspapers, reports, etc. As children, we remember waking up to the sound of the news coming over the radio. There were several speakers around this house who was connected to the radio. We couldn't escape the damn radio. My younger sister had inadvertently picked up some global tidbit from the blaring news, which at one time enabled her to win a call-in quiz program on the radio. Daddy could be called the jack of all trades. He serviced all the household appliances, fixed the fence, plumbing, etc. Motor mechanics was his hobby, and he took great pleasure in keeping the vehicles under his care in working condition. When his brother Moses died tragically in 1994, he took on the responsibility of managing the cows and attended to them, the dogs and chicken daily before going and after coming from work. I am very thankful to Daddy because it was his many skills that inspired me to become the person I am. Helping to rebuild the Pontiac was my genesis. It was there I saw how versed Daddy was as a mechanic. He was very good with his hands. He had the touch. I heard stories of him and his friend Parmanan overhauling and doing repair works to cars right next door at what used to be the gas station. The car would come in the afternoon, Daddy would remove and overhaul the engine, and his good friend Parmanan would do all the welding repairs. By morning, the car was on the road driving again. I remember another time as a young man, I took out the Land Rover carburetor to do some work on the manifold, and when I reinstalled it, I could not get the vehicle to idle. I tried all adjustments and in vain until I gave up and decided to call on him. He came, he looked at it. Within seconds, he was able to rectify it. I can boast that my skills I learned from my father. Whether it's plumbing, electrical work, soldering, mechanical work, he knew it all. In fact, we never took a plumber to do any of the work in this house. It was all done by us. He was a great lover of cricket. I remember in 1994, when Brian Lara scored his record-breaking 375, he looked at it on TV and he was ecstatic. He made me record it, and he would from time to time look back at it, always as if it was him that broke the record. Daddy, you will be forgotten. We are thankful to have had you as our father. We wish you could have been here longer. Our lives will continue to be guided by a discipline and principles you demonstrated, and we endeavor to exemplify your legacy. We thank you, we love you, and may your soul be in bliss. We, the children, would also like to thank Mommy for playing an integral role in Daddy's life and for trying your best in his last days. We love you, Mommy. Thank you.
Thank you, son. We now bring the curtain down as we move to Kashida. Thank all of you. Those who will go there, we'll see you there. Rest in peace, dear comrade. We have the party song.
To keep the red flag flying, we're building our Guyana free, not half a slave and half a free. We hunger for that larger life, we'd welcome necessary strife. Give us the sign and forward go, each one must be our hero. The People's Fortress PPP will keep the red flag flying. Oh, comrades here and comrades there, oh, comrades, comrades everywhere. Our cause is just and when we must, we'll grind oppression in the dust. Oh, workers, stand fast in the line. Oh, comrades, give the fighting sign. The people's only flag is red. We'll keep the red flag flying. The people's army marches on. The people work and march as one. For every woman, every man, work for a brave, progressive plan. Give us a change and fighting sign. Long may the people's glory shine. We're staying in the PPP to keep the red flag flying.
start. Wow. That's the only reason you're here, eh? Oh yeah, party. Jivan. Just stand up here and watch this thing coming down and make nobody jump. Now I come back quickly, right? Listen.
Watch it, please. Yo. Nengkatan nih. Enggak apa bro.
Mami ka. Oh, you drive. Hi. I think I end this live, right? Let me see.
Come in, Dicky, you, G1. I can get a drop. Pinky, you guys want to go?
Did you go hold it? Did you?
Rosanna, you going right?
Yeah,
go inside the vehicle. You, G1 and Vicky.
What?
The window. I think the window for now, so we get
This thing on the window.
the window. Just hold this out like this.
You want me to help anybody to go?
Yes, you can see who want to go. And you will come. G1 brother named Luai. Tell me whoever left back and want.
Big belly boy. Wait there.
Monkali Josa, Monkali Josa.
Raj, they contact Dalu. It's a
They call it baby father.
baby father.
The feed there.
Blow, blow, blow.
We got to contact you. Raj, Dicky,
Yeah.
tell you like check with the boss, right? The boss. See. Not a yellow boss, some grey boss.